Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Rounding the Bases, presented by Community America Credit Union, invested in you. My guest today definitely wins the award for coming from probably the furthest place. I've had a couple of other guests overseas, Asia, maybe one in Europe at some point. I can't remember. I know we've got people listening all over the world, which is awesome too. But this will get a good geography lesson along with everything else of why I have my guest on. A quick shout out to my friends at Chief of Staff Kansas City who are not overseas. I don't know that they'll ever be overseas. They're right down the street from me, but a great office. I love to partner with them. They believe in culture. They believe in everything that I'm working on. And so if you're in the search for a job or you're looking to hire someone or just a resource, they've got a lot of great resources, free stuff. Give them a shout or check them out, chiefofstaffkc.com, making connections that matter. You do not need to be in Kansas City for that to happen, although I don't know if you could be in Saipan for that to happen. Today, actually for me as I record this, it's tonight. I don't usually record tonight, but it's tomorrow where my guest is at, and it's during the day for him. So I'll just say today, this is all evergreen. I'm joined by a category pioneer who revolutionized the global gaming business. His name is Blaine Graboyes, a digital media architect who found entrepreneurial success at the intersection of art and innovation. For more than 30 years, he has challenged boundaries in pursuit of paths less traveled. In doing so, securing his position as more than a maker with a penchant for industry firsts, but an accomplished creative whose contributions are not to be forgotten. And with that said, I'm going to bring in Blaine overseas, where it is tomorrow morning and it is yesterday night for me. I don't know if that makes sense. Blaine gets it. Blaine, how are you?
I'm great, Joel. Thank you so much. That intro was amazing. I might want to crib that from you. Thank you.
We'll get it for you. And I always like to do the full disclaimer, and I could write book number 2 is coming out next month, but my amazing assistant producer, Ashley, handles all of it. She writes it. That she is incredibly creative, and I always love to read her stuff, especially when my guests say, I want that, and we can get you that. Before I get into all of what you've done in your career and everything that you're doing, which is, I think, always been relevant, but nowadays with the world of gaming and gambling and everything that is going on, it's like it feels like everything's moving fast, and I think you've been there for so long that you could shed a lot of light on this in your career. But how in the world does someone end up where you're at geographically right now? And can you explain to all of my geographically challenged listeners, myself included, I mean, I did a little research, where the heck you are?
Sure. I'm here in the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. It's a Commonwealth of the U.S. We're about 2,000 miles east of Asia. So think Philippines, right out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And, I guess for me, my journey started in Las Vegas 4 or 5 years ago. I moved from there to Scotland part-time during the beginning of the pandemic, and ultimately the United Kingdom and London for the last few years. And now over here working on a really innovative project that we'll be launching in 2025.
So cool. So, I mean, I always love asking my guests, like, what did you dream of growing up and where are you at now? Maybe a little bit of, the second book is already close to being out. That the title of that book is Small Ball, Big Dreams. I've always been fascinated by people's dreams because they rarely you really end up where you thought you were going to. And even if you did, I guess I became obsessed with this because almost every baseball player I interview after, say, their first game is, this is what I dreamed of. This is what, and it's like they did. They had dreams in the backyard of one day playing in the big leagues. Most don't get there, but the dream and the path and the journey never is what you thought it was, if you even thought of the journey. So I could say with decent certainty that you didn't say, one day at a certain point in my career, I'm going to go live in Saipan or over in Asia or wherever. So what were the dreams growing up?
Well, I mean, first of all, I grew up in a pretty small town called Bensalem outside of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. Just being international was a pretty big thing for me the first time that it happened. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a librarian. The Philadelphia Library is one of the great libraries in the world, and I remember just how passionate I was about going there and walking through the stacks of books and pulling out random books and reading the encyclopedia and super nerdy kid stuff. I mean, I did play baseball and soccer when I was a kid, so those were passions for me too. But I was thinking about it over the last few years. I would say, what were my dreams when I was a kid? And it was really more emotional, I would say. And it was about freedom in a certain sense, and the freedom to be able to follow my dreams and invest in my passions. Really, if there is a thread from childhood to now, other than I still love books and would love to be a librarian, having that, passion for freedom. And, as an adult, that's really led to certain risk taking when it comes to trying new things and starting new businesses. And, as you mentioned earlier, being a category pioneer or moving overseas. But the big thing for me would be, searching for that freedom to be able to really follow your passions and ideas.
Is that just curious, I mean, is that a never-ending quest?
It has been so far. I hope it is. I hope it is. I'll be 51 in a month. So I hope it's only about halfway on that journey. One of my, I guess you would say, people that I look up to was the artist Marcel Duchamp. And he became a librarian very late in life.
Interesting.
I didn't even know that about him when I, started to learn about him. And he also had a really strong connection with Philadelphia, which I didn't learn till much later. But I hope it's a lifelong passion.
I was just thinking about something too. This is unrelated. It's not going to mean anything except maybe to some of my family if they're listening. But one of the first things, I didn't say this to you in advance, one of the first things that I was, when I saw you, when I first met you virtually, I said, man, you actually look a lot like my brother. And then you were telling me that your birthday is, coming up here in December. And you gave me the date, and then you just said that you're about to turn 51. And it dawned on me, I should send you a picture afterwards. It dawned on me that you are, I believe, one day younger than my brother. Wow. Just a weird thing. By the way, we were both born outside of Philadelphia, but we were on the Jersey side, which sometimes people on the Pennsylvania side look down on that. I don't know why, but
got nothing against Jersey.
Yeah, but we moved to the Midwest when I was 13. But I still love Philly. I love when I get back there for baseball. It's such a cool historic city. I'll have some more stuff about your travels and where you've been and all of that, but I want to talk about your career. Actually, before we go back, was your ending up in Europe and then ultimately where you're at right now for work, was that pandemic, was the motivation pandemic related at that point, or did it just happen to be at the same time?
It happened to be at the same time. And I would say generally I try to look at challenges as opportunities. You can only change the things you can change, and it's not worth trying to change the things you can't. So, when the pandemic happened, I had the opportunity, and so I took it, and it just sort of led to an ongoing journey that's brought me here. And, it's sort of back to that whole idea around freedom, right? Of being able to have the freedom to follow your passions and take some risks in business and see where that journey is going to take you.
So I was looking at your website, which is blaineglobal.com, BLAINE global, blaineglobal.com. And, when it lists off the select clients and partners, I mean, it is a who's who list. And I'll just read some of them. I mean, certainly from the sports world, NFL and NHL, you're talking about Caesars Entertainment, DirecTV, Disney, Sony, TMZ, Warner Brothers, on and on and on, Microsoft. They're all big names. Tell me about the path to getting to that point and some of the work that you've done over the years.
Sure. Well, I always say it all started at Bennington College in Vermont. I'm so lucky that I learned about Bennington. I learned about it from my high school girlfriend who happened to go to their summer program and just sort of really dove into it, and just very, very thankful that it set me on a journey of really being multidisciplinary. You'll see on my website and my work, I always say I bring together creative, technical, and business, and I'm kind of the Venn diagram in the middle. And while I was at Bennington, I was a mathematics, sculpture, and philosophy of science major, not a triple major. My major was a thematic major. It was all of those things together. And I was very lucky in that my photography professor and my mathematics professor both were part of a group that started what was called the New Media Center at Bennington College, where we got a grant from Apple, Adobe, Kodak, companies that don't exist anymore, like Macromedia, that created Director, one of the early ways to make CD-ROMs and websites. And because it was our first computers, no one really knew anything about it. And I was just interested, and myself and a few other students started volunteering there. That grew into a pretty robust computer center. It eventually grew into 5 or 6 of us creating a CD-ROM view book. It was the first CD-ROM or multimedia view book from any college or university. This would have been like 1993, 1994, I think. And so, that was very entrepreneurial in and of itself. No one asked us to do it. No one paid us to do it. No one really even knew we were doing it until it was practically done. But that went on to essentially show me that you can have an idea, you can build a team, you can create something, and you can essentially do it all on your own. You don't have to ask permission or raise money or, wait for anything external. It's just a choice that you make.
I was thinking about this in advance of the interview, and I don't know if I know the answer because I don't think it's simple, but when someone says to you, hey, what do you do? Or, a friend says, oh, my buddy Blaine, he is an inventor or he is an artist. Like none of those on their own would describe you, right? I mean, it's sort of I think it's a collection of all of those. How do you describe yourself?
Well, it matters. On a lot of government forums, you have like very limited options. And like you said, it's often hard to fit in. I'm very proud to be a member of the Producers Guild of America. I'm a former board member and been very involved in helping start our former New York conference. And I really look at everything through the lens of a producer. Being a producer is a lot like being an entrepreneur. It's been a while since I've been in the film and TV side of things, but doing a film or TV production is no different from starting a company. You usually start a new entity, you raise money, you build a team, you have a plan, you execute, you market it, you wrap it up. The big difference with film and TV or event production is there's usually like an end to it. As I say to entrepreneurs who are thinking about getting, let's say, venture funding, there's only 2 ends to venture funding, right? There's closing the business or exiting the business. Those are the only two options that your investors are going to give you. And so I always look at things through the lens of I'm a producer. And, typically the first thing that I'll do is open up a spreadsheet or open up a notebook and just start creating an outline of things from that sort of producer's mindset.
And are you a guy that ideas are popping all the time?
Yes, though I keep a running list of them. And the way I look at it is if I've come back to an idea over 3, 5, 10 years, maybe it's worth investing a little bit more in. It's hard to get anything off the ground, right? I think it's so easy to look at whatever it is, a physical business, an online business, someone who's been in broadcasting for 30 years like yourself and say, oh, I could do that. Well, are you in the game? Are you playing? Because if you're not in the game and playing, no, you can't do that. You're not even on the field yet. And so, I think that if you have an idea and you keep coming back to it, then you might want to say, okay, I'm going to jump into the field with this one and see where it goes. But you have to pick, very carefully the things that you're going to invest your time and resources.
Was that something you think? I mean, there's no way you were then what you are today, because none of us are. I mean, there's a maturity and evolution in all of us, but I've got to think it takes a certain big picture thinking patience for it. And I mean, I know I'll ask you later on about a swing and a miss, but it seems to me like if you're talking about 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, that you have an ability to see big picture. Whereas so many of us are wired in like, we got to do this now. We live in a society where everything is right now. But then again, I'm thinking about, for a guy that wanted to be a librarian, for a guy that liked the experience of being in the library, a guy that liked to be in the books, even if you're speed reading, there's nothing quick about that, right? And so I wonder if you always had the mindset or you were built in a way to handle the big picture.
A good project takes a long time. Whatever the medium is, film, TV, book, podcast, physical store, startup company. I think for startups, the typical window to an exit's like 7 to 10 years. So if you're not willing to get into it for that long, you're definitely not going to be a success and, have the exit that people dream of. You certainly can get, I would say, smaller wins along the way, which I think is something that people are really missing out on in a society where, we see so much media about billionaires and it seems so aspirational to be swinging for the fences, to use a baseball metaphor. But I think that there's a lot more to it than that. And it takes a long time to successfully develop a project that is either going to be sustainable, right? I mean, the best possible outcome for a business is that it's sustainable, that you could keep doing it forever. You could take profits. If someone else wants to buy it, they could buy it and sustain it. As I said, the only other outcomes are to exit it or to close it. And so if you want to build something sustainable, it's going to take a long time. I wouldn't say that I always had that much patience, but I've definitely come to find it in things. But the other thing that you made me think about, Joel, is in the startup world, I often consult with a lot of what I call idea stage investors. These are people that just have an idea. And in their mind's eye, the idea is so fully formed that there almost is nothing left to do. Like they actually see it as already done and successful. And then often, maybe I'll engage with them. And one of the first things that I like to do is create a financial model, right? Just like to say, okay, let's take your idea and put it into a spreadsheet and see what the unit economics look like. 9 times out of 10, it would not work. Whatever they saw in their mind's eye will not work practically in today's modern economy. So then you can go back and you can tweak it and evolve the idea. But now you're on that journey, if you will. And so many people just have this idea. And in their mind's eye, the idea is so perfectly fully formed, they haven't even taken the first step on the journey. And then upon taking that first step, I mean, Mike Tyson said it best, right? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And as soon as you build that first financial model and go pitch it, or try to get a loan from the bank, or invest your own money and see what the balance sheet looks like a year later, then it's often quite surprising that this idea that you had in your mind doesn't take shape in reality instantly.
It's so interesting. And, you know, I think there's an emotional piece obviously to it too, right? I mean, the emotions get in the way and you're sure you've got everything lined up and you're not thinking about the getting punched in the face part.
Yeah. And if you're not willing to take a couple of those punches, first of all, you're not even in the ring. So you're not in the fight, but you're definitely not going to get to the last round.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
right.
so patience is important. And I think that leads to pace, right? There's a great saying, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And I think in startup culture, with so many other things, I think, baseball as well, right? If you can slowly and smoothly do something, you're eventually going to be an expert at it and do really quick. And, be an expert making that, throw from third base to first base, which is, tough one. And so in startup, I think there's this obsession with moving fast, and it's so American as well. And it really isn't beneficial to the long-term outcome.
That's so good. And so it just really resonates with me, every bit of it. And I've always thought baseball is such a great teaching tool. It's great that I'm in it, and it helps for me to be able to leverage that. But there's everything about baseball mirrors what you're saying, even just the season, right? I mean, we celebrate a football game every week here in the States. And certainly in Kansas City, where we have the Chiefs, it is an event every single week. But like, people get together for it, and it's a whole thing. Baseball's every night. Struggle tonight, get back at it tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And when 6 months is done, the marathon is over. A handful are going to get to move on, and then sort of the urgency and the sprint starts. But like, it's a hard thing because fans are wired for right now, and they want instant gratification. And they get so frustrated when it's like, it's just a game today, no big deal. Fine, we lost 5 in a row. Fine, we lost 7 in a row. And it's such a tiny little thing, but it feels big in the moment. So I think there's some similarities, to entrepreneurship and startups that really, really make a lot of sense to me. I'm not a patient person, by the way, but I know how to do baseball patiently. And that's just years of having done it. When was the, haven't really talked as much about being an artist yet. Haven't talked about as much about being an inventor yet. When was your first patent?
Oh, wow. I guess my first patent was in 2015 around video game gambling.
Yeah.
So later, it took a while to learn about, it took a while to learn about legal and financial stuff in terms of properly building the foundation for your startup. And that's another thing that I like to talk about with idea stage companies. It might seem like a waste of resources to like properly hire a lawyer to incorporate and do a financial model and file a patent and issue your equity properly. But I could assure everyone it's way easier to do it up front than it is to fix it later. And a lot of law firms will work with you financially on that if you have a funded startup or something with a proven track record to help you get started. And so it took a really long time, and it took some losses, right? You don't learn a lot from winning. So often you don't even know why you won, right? So I love dogs, right? And it's like the funny saying about like dogs chasing the squirrel and then they catch it and they don't even know what to do. They don't even know why they caught it. But you learn a lot by losing, and you develop your strategy and you do it better the next time. And, that's what video games are about, right? As a gamer, I'm going to go against the final boss 1,000 times, tweaking every bit a little bit till I beat the final boss. And I find that in business, particularly in startups, it's just so important to be buttoned up really early on. And so it wasn't until, I guess, almost 20 years later that I learned a lot of these things about how to really organize, but how to do it efficiently. It's very easy to spend $50,000, $100,000 on legal fees before you've batted an eye.
Wow.
You don't want to do that. There's a lot you can do yourself, or, as I said, a lot of law firms will help you. But it took a while to learn how to do those things.
I was looking at all the list. You've produced more than 4,000 projects for, I mentioned some of the names, Nickelodeon, Disney, DirecTV, on and on and on. But I saw, in our research that you launched the first DVD company in New York in 1996. Now, for our younger audience, for any Gen Z out there, let me explain what a DVD is. The way we used to have to talk about, records, cassettes, and before that, 8-tracks, which you and I were a little bit young for. But
I remember 8-track.
But we were aware of them, right? Now, nobody has a DVD now, but oh my gosh, to have one of those DVD players was something special. Take me back to those days in 1996, and if I'm doing my math right, you would have probably been getting right out of college right around then.
I was right out of college, and there wasn't even a consumer DVD player yet. As I mentioned earlier, I'd been involved in like CD-ROMs and websites. And for me as a visual person, I would say the biggest frustration I had with early multimedia was how low resolution the video was. We used to call it postage stamp video. That was a saying we had back then, because it would be like 15 frames per second and like this big on screen. And then I remember getting shown DVD and it was full screen and it was like watching TV. And I was like, this is incredible. This is what everybody wants the experience to be like. And so we founded a company called Zuma Digital in New York. It was the early 90s. As I said, there wasn't even consumer DVD available yet. It was just so early days. You would program a DVD in a programming language.
Right.
Eventually, it became kind of visual scripting. I remember buying the first DVD-R. So this is a writable DVD. We bought the first one ever from Pioneer, and I remember it was $35,000 at the time, and we were lucky to get one. And we went on at Zuma to pioneer a number of categories. So not just being the first DVD company, but we were the first to create a product called Active DVD that let you use DVDs in presentations. We created a product called Archive DVD that let you use DVD for archiving. I went on to produce a ton of DVD games, which was a huge category for a while. And then to your point, Joel, I remember having a DVD collection in the thousands.
Yep.
And at the time, I was living in very rural Pennsylvania in Bucks County. And I donated my DVD collection to our local video store. And I more than doubled her collection with my donation. And that was essentially the transition to, streaming for me, I guess, around 2012, 2013, that would have been.
Hey kids, we used to have these things called video stores. I mean, like a Friday night, you had to get there and hope that the newest rental was out, and they had a bunch of copies of the popular ones. And if they were out, you had to settle for something else. And you did this with your friends, and on and on and on. Right? It was I think it was probably VHS at first, and then DVD. But
and you were lucky if you were allowed to do two, right?
Oh, yeah.
For the weekend.
Yeah. Those are the good old days. Now it's like now for me, it's like my kids, they're both in college. I'm going to get at least 1 or 2 texts a week between the two of them. And what's the password for whatever again? And it's they got every streaming service and all of that, which leads me to my last question before we get to the baseball theme questions. Like, what's next? Where's everything going right now? There's always a next. And I think for a guy like you, there's always a next. You're always innovating. You're always thinking. So if these ideas, as we've established already, don't just happen in the middle of the night, oop, I'm going to do this. They're kind of marinating for 5, 7, 10 years, whatever it is. Is there a trend? I mean, like gambling right now is off the charts. And I think we're just scratching the surface on that for better and worse. I mean, it's like, I'm not really a gambler. I'm interested in the entertainment of maybe putting a few bucks on a game or something like that on my phone just because it's something to pay attention to. But I'm not good enough to make this a habit. I think it'd be a costly habit for me. I've got friends that are really good at it, but it's everywhere. It's available, and it's just, I feel like popping. What's coming next? What interests you?
Yeah, well, for me, the gambling thing was a bit of happenstance, and it sort of came from understanding some of the challenges in the industry and coming from the entertainment and video game background. I'm not a gambler, and it's not something I would necessarily recommend or to promote to people, but I do believe it should be properly regulated and taxed and managed. And so I'm a big believer in seeing that happen. I have been working on a new project to the theme of what we've been talking about. I've been working on it for the last 3 years. My partner and our CTO has been working on it for more than the last 5 years. We'll release in 2025. So it shows, again, these sort of timelines. Mm-hmm. I am working, again, sort of in the confluence of gaming or video games and finance, if you will, because I think it's an interesting space to be solved. I think we're seeing a lot of challenges in the space, and the challenges that you see in the space really, I think, have a lot to do with the pace at which technology advances and the challenges at which government moves. And I think, not to focus too much on gambling, because you could make this example in any space, but in the US right now, I would say the 2 biggest challenges in the gambling space are crypto casinos and sweepstakes casinos. Not that I'm involved in or follow either of them, but I know that they're both big areas that are complex, let's say, in the US. And so these kinds of issues are going to have to be resolved on a large scale, and they're going to have to be resolved in a forward, future thinking manner.
Yeah.
We can't be looking at things in a legacy manner. And I'm not even talking about the impact of things like AI or cryptocurrency. I'm just talking about the very, very basics of computer technology and the fact that so many industries haven't caught up with it. And now we're seeing, the cross section at speed, at momentum of AI and cryptocurrency and some of these other big forward momentum, headwinds, if you will. And so we have just a lot of industries that are still operating in the 80s or 90s. And I just don't see how they're not going to be completely left out in the cold.
Very interesting stuff. And where the world is changing fast. I don't know. Maybe it always was. It feels like it is more so right now. So that's a little bit of what might be coming ahead. And I suspect that in 2025, we'll get a better feel for what you've been working on. And we're looking forward to that. Let's go to I'm going to give you my 3 baseball themed questions, and then we'll wrap it up with 4 to finish the interview. What's among the many, 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 many things that you have done, what's the biggest home run that you've hit?
Well, getting married recently is definitely the biggest, but
Congrats.
We're talking career stuff here. And
yeah, by the way, Blaine, the first year I started asking that home run question, every guest mentioned their wife or their husband and their marriage, and I thought that's great, but it wasn't what was meant to be the question. However, if you're a newlywed, I'll take that as part 1. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Okay. How about professionally?
But the big one for me was actually being a category pioneer by accident, and then finding out later that it was a thing that you could be. And I discovered it from a book called Play Bigger. So I don't want to take credit for the ideas in Play Bigger. If anyone watching this hasn't read it, there's 2 books I recommend to everyone. Play Bigger is one, and Extreme Ownership is the other. But I would say the biggest for me is actually learning that the thing you do is a thing you can do as a career, right? So how often are you doing something and it doesn't even fit into the paradigms of the rest of the world? You said it earlier. How do you even describe or name yourself? And it took me 20 years to find out that, wow, this thing that I do, that it turns out I'm actually kind of good at, it has a name. It's called category design. And that really, for me, it's only happened in the last few years, and I'm very thankful for that.
You feel like you have a little bit of not that you need a label, but it's like, this is what it is.
Yeah, it really feels great to be able to self-identify in that way of saying, wow, looking back, that is exactly what I've been doing the whole time, that I could never. Everyone wants to put a pin in something. Yeah. You're a lawyer, you're an accountant, you're a whatever. And those are great careers, but I could never quite put a pin in it. I always said it's this Venn diagram between creative, technical, and business. But that Venn diagram is being a category designer.
Creative, technical, and business, which covers so much and is what you do. What about a swing and a miss along the way? There are plenty of swings and misses. I know you're not afraid to acknowledge that, right?
I got tons of swings and misses, and there's a bunch of things I are in. And you said creative, technical, and business are a lot of it, but there's ones that aren't. Marketing is one. I'm really, I might have great ideas, but I'm not great at marketing. So I would say I've had a bunch of swings and misses when it comes to marketing. And ultimately I've learned, leave that to people better. I've taken some big chances on platforms. I had a company called Silver Platter. After DVD, we were the first UMD Universal Media Disc company, publisher, independent publisher. This was for the Sony PlayStation Portable.
Hmm.
If people listening haven't heard of DVD, you definitely haven't heard of UMD. So that was a big swing and the miss in terms of something we thought was going to be really big. What's cool is the things that the ideas of why I took the swing are still really valid.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's this whole idea of, like, a great example is I at Zuma, our first company, I executive produced the first interactive movie on DVD. I would love to see more interactive entertainment, more interactive movies. It's a really hard space to crack for a ton of reasons, and I've taken a bunch of swings and misses at that, and I'd love to see it work out somehow in the future.
Really interesting. Okay, the last one is small ball, the little things that add up to big results. You talked about patience. You talked about so much, but what is small ball to you? What are those little things?
Wow, I love this question because, and we talked about it earlier. There's so much fandom for billionaires and unicorns. So one of the things I always recommend, and I think this is great small ball thinking, always take the exit. If you have a business and someone's offering you an exit and it's a reasonable exit, take the exit. If it's a single or a double, that's an awesome win.
Mm-hmm.
You can get right back at bat. You're going to have greater experience. You're going to learn more. You're going to have people that want to work with you. I think this idea that everything has to be a grand slam home run is just a little bit, it's a little bit outdated. And I think we're going to see a big change over the next few years around that. I would say, other than that, you got to stay healthy, because otherwise you can't be on the field and be in the game. Yeah. And I see so many entrepreneurs like bragging about hustle culture, and I work 8 days and it's 20 hours, but you're not going to be able to sustain that. You're going to get sick. You're not going to be able to get to the end result that you started the journey for. Yeah. So I think great small ball is you've got to take care of yourself.
You know, I was at an event a few weeks ago, and it was an informal thing, but it was a lot of young, kind of up and coming, early to mid 20 somethings that all like got great jobs out of college. And I heard somebody give them the message, like, this is your 20s, just work nonstop as hard as you can. And then they came to me for advice. And I said, I'm not saying don't work hard. And I did too. But, like, you know, the biggest thing I hear when I ask superstar athletes that are towards the end of their career, what would you tell your younger self? Every one of them, slow down and enjoy it. Slow it down a little bit. Don't be in such a rush to go where you're going. And so, I mean, I totally agree with you on that. Certainly the physical aspect of taking care of yourself, but, you know, like, smell the roses a little bit along the way. There'll be more too. And, you know, that's you don't want to tell somebody to work less. Ideally, they're going to figure it out on their own of what that sweet spot is. But that's a hard thing to grasp when you're young, I think.
I think it's important to hear it, though. Yeah. And the fact that you're
Agreed.
Sharing it with people, there aren't a lot of voices out there saying that you don't have to work every day, that it doesn't have to be 20 hours. A lot of those hours are not well spent. What's really important is the hours that you put in that are highly productive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, 4 final questions as we round the bases. By the way, I absolutely love those small ball answers. They were really profound for me, and just you're speaking my language, which is really nice to hear. It's just a lot of clarity with all of that. My first question as we round the bases: if I were to hop on a plane right now and find my way to Saipan, I don't think it's happening, but I'm sure I'd be flying forever. what would I be landing to? What would I experience? What would I see when I got to where you're at right now, knowing nothing about that part of the world and that place that is U.S. territory, I believe? What would I see?
It's really a land and time between other spaces. That's the way I would describe it, and I describe it to people. It really exists kind of in a world, an ethereal world unto itself, and every single thing you would see and experience would feel somewhat familiar, yet completely strange and foreign. And if you were open-minded and open-hearted, the people and the place would be the most welcoming you've ever experienced.
Give me one like little example, whether it's food or conversation, culture. Like, first off, what's the climate there right now? Is it hot? Is it?
It's about 28 Celsius. I've lived overseas, so that's like 85, 90.
Okay, it's hot.
I believe year round.
Yeah,
So
okay.
it's the same temperature year round. Everyone here speaks English, but as a mainlander, sort of sounds like they're from East LA. So, you know, that's very different. It's a huge melting pot of people. I mean, I've lived all over the world, in London and Dubai and here, other places. One of the greatest melting pots of people, though mostly Asian because of the location. And so it just really, as I said, it's this world that time forgot. And if you're willing to move at a slower pace, it's really an incredibly welcoming and kind place to be.
Very cool. All right, second question as we round the bases. All I need to say is 2 words or one name, and you'll give me the story. Lou Reed.
So the coolest thing ever was I got to lend Lou Reed my personal DVD player when we made this DVD with Timothy Greenfield Sanders about his life. And Lou brought it to, now I'm showing my age, Václav Havel, to Václav Havel, to show him the DVD, and they both signed it. And that unfortunately has been lost to time. I have no idea where that is. But that was one of the many, many projects I got to work on with artists and people that I just incredibly admire. Both Timothy and Lou, incredible artists, and just an absolute blessing to be able to work on a project. That's the story, is I got to lend him my personal DVD player.
And for those, again, that don't know, in reference to the name, the last president of Czechoslovakia, which did used to be a country, and well, now we've got a different version, obviously. So that is super cool. Nobody else, by the way, has that story. That's a one of a kind. Okay, yeah. Third question, as we round the bases. Well, I'm going to go with this one third, and then I've got a fun one for last. I saw in my notes, my research actually prepares me very well for all of this. And I love this. Your motto: be polite, calm, and kind. It is a golden rule. It is so simple. I think that's true in any profession, although oftentimes lost. Tell me where that comes from and how it has served you well.
Thanks for mentioning that, Joe. I don't wear a lot of suits anymore, but I have it monogrammed on the inside of all of my suit jackets. First of all, it's really easy. I mean, my dad was really big on the golden rule, right? Like, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And it's so easy to be in positions where it feels unfair, right? So much of the world you're like waiting in line, and the next line next to you goes faster, and then you get in that line, right? Like classic, that's like the comic example, and it just goes up from there. But if you're able to come back to this idea of like, be polite, calm, and kind. And part of it stems from a belief, and I know this is going to sound naive. I really need to work from the place that everyone is doing their best.
Hmm.
Their best might not be what I would do. Their best might not be in the moment what they would do in another moment, but they're really doing their best. And we don't know what else is in their world or their inner,
Mhm.
experience. And so for me, looking at the world through this lens of be polite, calm, and kind frames everything for me, where after that I can sort of take everything in stride, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I always say being a CEO is the worst job, right? It's the worst job. Everyone thinks it's the best job, but it's the worst job. And in a given day, you're going to have, 10 great things, or 10 medium things, one or two great things, or one or two horrible things. And if you react to the great things or the horrible things, your whole day is going to be ruined. And it's sort of the same with the rest of your life, right? If you can't say please and thank you, if you can't be calm when someone cuts you off, if you can't be kind to someone if they drop something and help them pick it up, everything else is going to be really difficult with the rest of your life. And you see people who go through life and they seem really frustrated. And I feel like a lot of it stems from that being adversarial to the world is just not a great place to be.
Well said. Well said. And it's something
It's also, I'll just add, it's totally free,
yeah,
right? Be polite, calm,
yeah.
and kind.
Doesn't take much. Every now and then it could take a little more. It tests you a little bit, but you know what? It's a great place to start. It's a great place to go about your business. And you know what? People will keep asking you to come back if you do good work and you treat people right. If you don't treat people right and you don't follow those golden rules, you better be really, really, really good at what you do. And maybe they'll let you stay around a little bit longer. Doesn't give you the
Yeah.
license for it. It just might mean that they'll look the other way because you're so good at what you do. But it's a lot easier to control that one element or those elements for sure. All right, my walk-off question, I was thinking about this. Yeah, I mean, you had original dreams of being a librarian, so you love to read. I could ask you about an impactful book, but I'm pretty sure you could give me 1,000 of them or 100 of them or whatever it's going to be. So let's say one day you could retire and be that librarian, or you get a little sabbatical to go and be a librarian. Give me a library around the world that you would say that this is where I want my office to be.
Oh, God. Well, I mean, I actually had a friend who had one there. So I can say I was quite jealous then and now. He at the New York Public Library. Apparently you can, I don't know the circumstances now, but under different circumstances, you can have a office. You know what's funny about this question, Joel? At Bennington, you were allowed to get a desk at the library. And I'm going to guess at the time I went to Bennington, there were maybe 350 students at the whole college. It was very small at the time. Thankfully, they've grown. They're about twice that big nowadays. I think there were like 10 of us that had desks in the library out of 350 that went and used it. And it was like the one quiet place. It smelled like all this knowledge in the books. Whenever you needed to take a break, you could just walk down the aisles and find all of this inspiration. So it's funny you asked that I went and had a desk at Bennington, and I guess the New York Public Library would be the one.
Be a pretty good place to start. I sometimes I just like to wander into those libraries, just wander around, and you just see what you're going to see, right? It's just such a cool thing.
Yeah, I wonder today, we've mentioned a few times, DVDs so old, the Dewey Decimal System for me as a kid and the card
Yeah.
catalog. I just loved the exploration of that and finding new ideas. And I know that happens the same way digitally now, and I love the fact that it happens digitally now. But just for me and the time I grew up in, let's say, the 80s, that was just a really big part, of my life growing up.
Yeah, from elementary school on. I wouldn't want to go back to that yet. There's an incredible nostalgia to it, like the DVDs and like the on and on. What about the projects that we had to research on microfiche? Microfiche?
Oh, I loved that.
Right?
They
Yeah, yeah.
I loved it.
Lived on that stuff for projects. Now you just jump on Google and go find what you're going to do. This has been so much fun. I want to encourage everybody, if you want to learn more about Blaine's work, blaineglobal.com. We'll have it in the show notes. And I guess I'll say have a great day to you, and you could say goodnight to me. But that's the beauty of technology and doing all of this virtually now. It's been an absolute pleasure, Blaine, to be able to meet you, catch up with you, hear about your career, at least little bits and pieces of it, because I know there's so much. Thanks for spending time with me on Rounding the Bases.
Thanks so much for having me, Joel. It's a real pleasure.
It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.